I sat across from Dr. Patel and watched her face shift from professional concern to something closer to alarm was the day my entire world cracked open down the middle. She slid the lab report across her desk slowly, like she was giving me time to prepare. I stared at the numbers without really seeing them. My hands were shaking. They had been shaking for 3 months by then, and I had been telling myself it was just age. Just my body reminding me that I was 67 years old and not the woman I used to be. Dorothy, she said carefully, these results are not consistent with a natural decline. I looked up at her. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. I nodded. What else could I do? That was 6 weeks ago. And if I had not walked into that office, if I had not finally listened to my daughter Patricia, who had been calling me every Sunday for 2 months saying, "Mom, something is wrong. Please go see someone," I am not sure I would still be here to tell you any of this. My name is Dorothy. I spent 31 years teaching 8th grade English in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. I raised 2 children, mostly on my own after my husband Gerald passed from a heart attack when our son was 14 and our daughter was 11. I have never in my life considered myself a dramatic person. I do not exaggerate. I do not catastrophize. When Gerald died, I went back to work after 2 weeks because the mortgage did not care about my grief and neither did the electric bill. So when I tell you that what happened in my own home, at the hands of someone I had welcomed into my family, was the most terrifying experience of my life, I need you to understand that I am not being dramatic. I am simply telling you the truth. My son Michael is 42. He is kind in the way that some men are kind, genuinely but passively. He never raises his voice. He always remembers my birthday. He calls every few days and means every word he says. He married his wife Lauren about 4 years ago after dating her for almost 2 years. I was happy for him. I was genuinely happy for him. She was sharp, organized, good at managing things. She had a way of taking over a room without seeming to try. I told myself that was a quality, a strength. They moved in with me about 18 months ago. That was my idea, if you can believe it. My house is large, a 4-bedroom colonial that Gerald and I bought in 1989 and paid off together before he died. My knees had started bothering me on the stairs. Patricia lives in Arizona with her husband and their 2 kids, and the thought of rattling around alone in a 4-bedroom house with bad knees felt increasingly foolish. Michael suggested it before I even brought it up. Lauren agreed. We all sat at my kitchen table and worked out the details like reasonable adults. For the first few months, it was fine. Better than fine, actually. Lauren cooked most nights. She is a genuinely good cook. The kind of precise, methodical cook who follows recipes exactly and gets results every time. I appreciated not having to think about dinner. I appreciated the company. The house felt alive again in a way it hadn't in years. I started feeling unwell sometime around last November. Tired first, not sleepy tired, but a bone-deep exhaustion that didn't lift after sleep. Then the headaches. Then a persistent nausea that I assumed was a stomach bug and kept waiting to pass. My hair started coming out in the shower in amounts that alarmed me, though I told Patricia it was fine, just stress, just winter. My doctor at the time, not Dr. Patel, I switched later, ran a basic panel and told me my iron was a little low and I should take a supplement. I took the supplement. I did not improve. By January, I was having trouble with my memory in ways that scared me, not forgetting where I put my keys, forgetting words mid-sentence. Forgetting the name of a colleague I had worked with for 11 years, I started writing everything down. I kept a notebook on the kitchen counter and in my bedroom and in my purse. Lauren noticed and said something kind about it. She said her grandmother had done the same thing and it was a smart system. I thanked her. I did not notice, not then, how much I had started to depend on her. She brought me my morning tea every day. She had started doing that sometime in October, just appearing at my bedroom door with a mug before I was even fully awake, and it had become routine so naturally that I stopped thinking about it. She made it the way I liked, strong, with a little honey and no milk. She brought me my vitamins on a small saucer alongside it. She tracked my medications after I mentioned once, in passing, that I sometimes forgot whether I'd taken them. Looking back, I want to shake the woman I was then by the shoulders, but I want you to understand something. When you are sick, truly sick, in a way that makes your body feel unfamiliar and your mind feel like it belongs to someone else, you do not think clearly. You do not look at the person handing you a warm cup of tea and think, why is she doing this? You think, thank God someone is taking care of me. You think I don't know what I would do without her. That is exactly what she was counting on. It was Patricia who first put words to what I had been refusing to form into a thought. She flew in for a long weekend in February, surprised me, showed up at the door with a rolling suitcase and her oldest boy's old stuffed bear that she'd found in a box and thought I might want. I burst into tears when I saw her. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed her until she was standing in my entryway. She stayed in the guest room. She watched. Patricia has always been observant in a way that Michael is not. She gets it from me, or so Gerald always said. By the second day, she pulled me aside while Lauren was at the grocery store and Michael was at work. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and put both her hands over mine. "Mom," she said, "how long have you been this sick?" I started to say I'm fine, which is what I had been saying for months. She squeezed my hands before I got the second word out. "Don't," she said. "I'm looking at you. You've lost at least 15 pounds. Your hands are shaking right now. You couldn't remember the name of your own street yesterday when you were giving me directions." I looked down at our hands on the table. Mine were trembling slightly. I hadn't noticed. "It came on gradually," I said. "It's just age, Patty." "It's not age," she said. "Mom, I need you to go see a different doctor, not Dr. Morrison. Someone new, someone who will run a full panel on everything and not just tell you to take iron." I almost argued. I'm ashamed to say I almost argued because Lauren had told me just the week before that changing doctors at my age could be disruptive and that Dr. Morrison knew my full history and it wasn't worth the upheaval. Those words had settled into me without my questioning where they came from. "Okay," I said instead. Patricia made the appointment herself before she left. Dr. Patel, a younger woman in a practice about 20 minutes from the house. She drove me there on her last morning in town, told Lauren we were going for breakfast, and sat in the waiting room while I went in alone. I gave Dr. Patel the full picture, every symptom, every timeline, everything I had been minimizing. She ordered what she called a comprehensive metabolic panel plus a heavy metal screen. I didn't know what that last part meant. I didn't ask. I was too tired to ask. The results came back in 4 days. She called me directly on my cell phone, not the house line. I remember thinking that was unusual. I stepped outside onto the back porch to take the call, in the cold in my cardigan, because something about her voice when she said my name made me want to be alone. The levels of thallium in my system were significantly elevated. Thallium, a heavy metal, she explained. Odorless, tasteless, colorless, causes neurological damage, hair loss, fatigue, memory disruption. It accumulates. It doesn't announce itself. Chronic low-level exposure over weeks or months produces exactly the picture I had been presenting. A gradual, confusing, easy to mistake for aging deterioration. "Dorothy," she said, "this does not happen by accident. This is not environmental exposure from your home or your water supply. We can rule that out. This level of thallium in your system means repeated ingestion." I stood on my back porch in the February cold and I did not speak for a long time. "Are you somewhere safe right now?" she asked. I looked through the glass door into my kitchen. Lauren was at the counter slicing something, her back to me, completely at ease in my home. "I'm outside," I said. "I'm alone." "Good. I want you to come in tomorrow morning. I'm going to refer you to a specialist, and I'm also going to advise you to speak with someone, a family member you trust completely, about your living situation before you come back in. Do you have someone like that, Patricia?" I thought of Patricia's hands over mine at the same kitchen table. "Yes," I said. "I do." I did not go back inside right away. I stood in the cold until I stopped shaking enough to think clearly. I ran through, carefully and deliberately, every person who had regular access to my food. Michael, Lauren, occasionally a neighbor, Carol, who came for coffee on Thursdays. That was it. That was the complete list. Carol did not make my morning tea. Carol did not set out my vitamins on a small saucer. Carol had no reason, not a single one, to want me sick. I called Patricia from the porch. I kept my voice quiet and even. I told her everything Dr. Patel had said. I heard her breathing change on the other end of the line, that sharp, controlled way she has of processing something terrible without falling apart. "Don't tell Michael yet," she said immediately. "Patty, Mom, listen to me. We don't know what Michael knows. We don't know what he's involved in. We need to know more before we tell him anything." I didn't want to believe that about my son. I still don't, fully. But I knew Patricia was right to be careful. Love is not the same as certainty. "What do I do?" I asked her. "You act completely normal. You drink whatever she gives you, and you pour it out when she's not looking. You don't eat anything she's prepared alone. You tell her you've been having stomach trouble, and you're only eating things that are easy to digest. Crackers, fruit, things you can get yourself. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said. "And I'm going to overnight you something tomorrow morning." She sent me a small, discreet home security camera, the kind that looks like a book on a shelf. She talked me through setting it up over the phone, positioned toward the kitchen counter, angled at the area near the stove and the pantry where Lauren spent most of her time when she was cooking or preparing anything. It took me 4 days to get enough footage to understand completely what had been happening. On the third morning, I watched Lauren prepare my tea. She was efficient, practiced, filled the kettle, set the mug, measured the honey. Then she went to the pantry. She was in there for less than 20 seconds. She came back to the counter. She added something from a small container, something I could not see clearly, but that she kept in the front pocket of her cardigan rather than anywhere in my kitchen. On the fourth morning, the camera caught it more clearly. The container. The deliberate addition to the tea, separate from anything else she touched. The way she smoothed her expression before she picked up the mug and carried it toward my bedroom. I had not been drinking the tea for 6 days by then. I had been thanking her, taking the mug, and pouring it down the bathroom sink when she left. I called Patricia. Then I called Dr. Patel's office. Then, on Patricia's very firm instruction, I called the non-emergency line for the local police and asked to speak with someone about a potential poisoning case. The detective who came to my house, a woman named Detective Reyes, was calm and thorough in a way that steadied me. She took the camera footage. She arranged for the contents of my pantry and my vitamin supply to be tested independently. She asked me to continue acting as normally as I could manage for a few more days while they worked. The tests on my vitamins confirmed it. 3 of the capsules in the bottle Lauren had been giving me had been opened and repacked. The contents had been adulterated. The specific compound matched the thallium markers in my blood work. Lauren was arrested on a Thursday morning. Michael was at work. She was in my kitchen when Detective Reyes and a uniformed officer knocked on the door. I was upstairs. I had asked to be upstairs. I didn't want to see her face when she realized it was over, but I heard her voice. Through the floor, through the walls of my house that I had lived in for 35 years. And what I heard was not panic and not grief. What I heard, for just a moment before the professional composure took over, was cold, flat calculation. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "Dorothy has been confused for months. She's been imagining things." Detective Reyes told me later. She said Lauren's first instinct was to use my deteriorating memory, the deterioration she had caused, as her own defense. That is the part that stays with me at night. Not the poison itself, but the architecture of it, the way it was constructed to be its own cover story. I found out through the investigation what I had refused to let myself suspect. Lauren had been quietly consulting a real estate attorney. She had researched what rights a surviving spouse and then a surviving child spouse might have to a property if the primary owner died intestate or with an outdated will. My will at the time left the house and most of my assets to Michael outright, which meant, in Lauren's calculation, to their marriage, to her. She had been patient. She had been methodical. She had, by every account, genuinely believed that what she was doing was simply a matter of timing. Accelerating something she felt was inevitable. I was 67 years old, and she had decided my timeline was inconvenient. Michael came home from work that Thursday to a house with a police vehicle in the driveway and his mother sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she had made herself. He stood in the doorway for a long time. I watched his face move through things I couldn't name and didn't try to. Mom, he finally said. Sit down, I told him. I'll explain everything. He cried. I am not going to tell you what kind of man my son is based on those tears, because I genuinely do not know yet. I don't know what he knew and didn't know and chose not to look at. That is a conversation we are still having, slowly over Sunday phone calls that feel nothing like they used to. I am choosing to believe in him while also holding him accountable. I am still learning how to do both at the same time. What I can tell you is what I did in the weeks after. I called an estate attorney and spent an afternoon completely restructuring my will. The house stays in my name until I choose otherwise. Patricia and Michael are each provided for fairly and specifically, with conditions that protect those assets from any future dissolution of marriage on either side. My neighbor Carol, who cried for 20 minutes when I finally told her what had happened and then brought me an entire lasagna, is listed as my healthcare proxy because I needed someone with no financial interest in my medical decisions. Lauren was charged with felony poisoning and elder abuse. She is awaiting trial. I have been told to expect the process to take time. I am prepared for that. I've been teaching myself patience for 67 years. I went back to Dr. Patel 3 weeks after Lauren's arrest. My thallium levels had already dropped significantly. My hair had stopped falling out. The trembling in my hands was almost gone. She looked at my results and smiled, a real smile, not the careful professional kind from our first appointment. You're going to be fine, she said. I believed her. Here is what I want to say to you. If you are watching this and you are my age or close to it, or if you have someone you love who is, the confusion and the fatigue and the forgetting, do not let anyone, no matter how kind they seem, convince you that it is simply who you are now. Get a second opinion. Get a third. Ask for the full panel. Ask what heavy metals means and why they're testing for it. Write things down not because your mind is failing, but because you're being methodical, and methodical is wise at any age. Notice who manages your medications. Notice who controls your food. Notice very carefully whether the person taking care of you also happens to benefit substantially if you are no longer around. I am not a suspicious person by nature. I spent 31 years trying to teach 14-year-olds to read carefully and ask good questions. Somewhere along the way, I stopped applying that to my own life. I'm applying it now. I still live in my house. My house, the one Gerald and I chose together, the one I painted the kitchen of 3 times before I got the color right, the one where Michael and Patricia grew up and made their noise and left their marks on the door frames where I measured their heights every birthday. Last month, I had the kitchen repainted, a warm yellow that I chose entirely by myself. Carol came over and we looked at the sample swatches spread across the counter and argued pleasantly about it for an hour. Then we had dinner, and she told me a story about her son that made me laugh so hard I had to sit down. I sat in my kitchen in my house and I laughed until I had to sit down. I plan to do that for a very long time. If you found this story helpful, if it made you think about someone you love or something you've been dismissing as just getting older, please share it. Leave a comment. Tell me your story if you have one. This channel exists because these things happen in real houses to real people. And the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to let them happen in silence. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.